I didn't think that I would be recording this type of episode because there's certain things that I prefer to just write opposed to actually talk about publicly, I guess. And only because I feel like I can express myself better in written word than I can speaking out loud. And I have recently written an article which is available to read. It's a blog post actually, available to read on dinkumdiaries.com. And it was titled, I Want a Husband But. Now, that particular post came from a very different angle to what I'm going to be talking about today. That kind of came from, I want a husband one day, but do I really? Because I'm doing all the things I shouldn't be doing if I really wanted a husband. Like, I don't enjoy being spoken to on the roadside. I can't really give all my energy spending time with anyone for the whole day, especially the opposite sex at the moment. It's a bit draining. All these things. And it was kind of like, the husband that I want, am I the wife that he deserves right now? That's what the angle from that written article was about. Since then, oh my gosh, I have had multiple conversations with different women, all within the same age group. So I would say from 35 to like 42, maybe. That's the age range. And some a bit older. And the discussions have kind of been around, like, it's been very, what's the word? Like, authentic and natural. You talk about your relationship and things that are happening, things you want to happen, things that need to change, things that are great, X, Y, and Z. However, I've recently been privy to so many of the same stories, but with different relationships, different men, but the same stories. It seems as though there are multiple men within that age bracket that lack emotional intelligence and maturity, lack effective communication skills, seem to be very selfish, do not know what it is to be a provider. And I'm not just talking about financial, I'm just talking about generally being a provider, being a leader, head of the household. There just seems to be a lack of it. And of course, a lot of these conversations that I am having are men that are worldly men, but also men that are in the church. I don't think it necessarily differs too much. However, obviously, a lot of what I have heard recently are those that are just in the world doing their thing, living a life that I think in their heads makes sense to their relationship, but their partners are extremely unhappy. And there just seems to be a rising phenomenon of women that are in relationships that are just single. Like, their man, they're there. They're in the house. They're sitting opposite them, but they're actually single. They're doing everything to do with their children. They're doing everything to run the household and all the in-betweens. And this is why the title of this episode is I Want a Husband But Not Yours. Because I think naturally, and I've spoken about this in like one of my other episodes, naturally you compare yourself when you get to a certain point in life, and sometimes you find yourself wanting the things other people have. And I've said it before, do not wish for things that other people have, because you don't know what's going on behind closed doors. Because a lot of the times on the surface, if you were to look from the window, everything looks lovely and shiny and smiley. But my goodness, it's horrific. And I said to my friend the other day, like, are we just being in a relationship to say we're being in a relationship just for the sake of it, just to say that you have someone there but you're just extremely unhappy? I don't want that. Please God, no. I would rather be alone. Like, I don't understand what's going on. And of course, there's an exception to this, and not every single person is living this reality. I am fully aware. But there is a lot of people living this reality that you wouldn't know. And it's really scary. So I was having a conversation with one of my friends who's kind of on the same level as me in terms of, listen, my peace is more important, my happiness is more important. If you're not elevating me, if you're not bringing something, and I'm not, if we're not elevating each other and bringing goodness to each other, then I don't see what we're doing. There's no need for us to be doing anything. And that's how I feel about it, and that's how a couple of my friends feel. But I'm actually I say shock. I don't know if I'm in shock that a lot of these men, boys, are lacking the characteristics of having, sustaining, raising a family, being the head of the household. I don't know if I would say I'm completely shocked. I just think it's incredibly sad, because it's not just the women involved that are being affected emotionally, mentally, but it's the kids that will pick up on the dynamics and will either continue this cycle or hopefully break it. But they witness this toxicity that is not always plain sight. It's not always, aggressive, screaming and shouting. And sometimes I think the passive aggressiveness and the condescending and the patronizing and the subtle manipulation is sometimes 10 times worse than the in your face. I think when people are upfront about their character and it's plain to see, it's sometimes a lot easier to deal with, because there's no second guessing. It's in your face. You know the person they are, and then you can choose whether, you know what, I know who you are because you show me who you are quite blatantly and everyone around sees it, but I'm just going to stay, and then that's on you. But then there's that narcissism that just seems to be like reeking at the moment. And I really try not to use that word narcissist too often, because I've said it before. I feel like it's used so much, it's boring. But my goodness, the amount of narcissistic men that are just here is insane. And this isn't about bashing men, because we know that there are a lot of narcissistic people. There are a lot of damaged people. There are a lot of broken people. There are a lot of awful women as well as men. Like, again, I understand that. But I'm focusing more on what I have been spoken to about in recent weeks and hearing. And it's not something that I would have spoke on if it was just one person or two people. But it's like so many different people experiencing the same thing in their relationships. And you wouldn't know unless they told you. And I'm just like, guys, why are we doing this? But then I understand why some people, like, I then had a conversation with a male friend, and I was explaining some of the things that I had been in conversation with about. And I was basically saying, this is the situation, this is what's happening, this is what he's doing, this is what she's doing, this, that, and the other. And I listened to him, and he's a great guy and has great values, but I listened to him almost make an excuse for the basic, like, oh yeah, but sometimes men just need to be told, like black and white, like this is what needs to be done, can you do it? And I said, yeah, that's the problem. You're an adult man, and I need to tell you to pick up this, or I need to tell you to feed your child, or why do I need to tell you that as an adult male? What? I don't understand. And I was just like, that's the problem. Like, as when you become a mother, for example, no one in this entire world has become a new mother and knew exactly what to do. And they worked it out because they had to, because their child was there, and they knew that, okay, this child needs to be fed, it needs to be bathed, it needs to be taken care of. And along the way you learn, and you make mistakes, but you learn, and you learn your child, and you know what your child wants, right? Why is it not the same for men? And then it was, oh, but I guess if he's out working and paying all the bills. And I was like, but he's not. Yeah, he works, but he's not paying all the bills. And even if he was, does that mean that his child doesn't get to experience his father at any point? No. Like, as I was talking to him, I was just like, okay, there's something wrong. And he asked me, with all the experiences that I have listened to and heard about, is there a common denominator in each one? And I said the only thing that I can see, without knowing too much detail, personal details about them, is that they all lacked their father's presence. But then I said, but I don't really think that has anything to do with it, because I think it's a choice. Because then you flip it to other men that I know that also didn't have their fathers around, and they are excellent partners, excellent fathers, I guess because they wanted to be who they didn't have. So again, it's choice, right? And I just feel like a lot of these men are just selfish and believe that they are absolutely God's gift to this entire earth, and don't need to do anything about it to be God's gift. Yes, we all know God created us and you have it within you, but you are not showcasing any of the qualities of the man that you're supposed to be. And I'm just like, but and my thing is, you're not showcasing that in your home, but then you know how to put on a face, you know how to, take the right pictures and portray this lifestyle to people, that you are this doting husband or doting, it's pathetic at this point. And this is why I'm like, yeah, I may want a husband, but I sure as hell do not want yours, because I don't even think you want yours. But because of years you've put into it, and I get it. I think I stayed in my longest relationship for as long as I did because it got to a point where I was like, well, look how much time I've spent with this person. Look how much time I've wasted. I can't now move on at this age. I've spent over a decade. How can I just have to stick with it? No, it's not by force. And that's another thing that my male friend said. He was like, well, they just need to stick it out and pray on it, and just, they're together now, they got a child. I said, I'm sorry, does that mean we're stuck? And don't get me wrong, I believe that, and okay, again, marriage is different to just boyfriend and girlfriend. As far as I'm concerned, you're still lawfully single anyway, that's a whole nother thing. But again, that is what I'm talking about. But over here in marriage, if you go into a marriage, I'm hoping that you know as much as you can about your partner before you get into that, and you work on that marriage. Of course, again though, just because you are married does not mean that you should put up with constant abuse or disrespect. Like, if a person is going to be a certain way and they have no intention of changing that behavior, then you are not stuck with that person. However, I do believe that people are too easy to throw away relationships and throw away marriages without working on it, of course. But there is a point where you say enough is enough. I am not doing this, regardless of the situation. But these relationships that haven't reached a marriage yet, but you want a ring, for what reason? Because this man is disgusting, and I don't understand why you would then want to get into a contract with this person. I find it wild, but it's that conditioning of our minds that, you know, I've been with this person, we have a child, so we might as well get married. Well, absolutely not. Like, it's a shame that you had the child, if I'm honest, but the child is a blessing, and the blessing that's come out of that union. So we thank God. But that does not mean that we are stuck. But my friend was like, yeah, they just have to get on with it. I said, no, yes, they need to exhaust every option. They need to go and see a therapist and try and talk through their issues and see if someone can highlight to whoever is in the wrong, this is what's happening, let's work on it. And if both parties are willing to do that, 100% it should be done. Exhaust all the options to ensure that you know, can get to a point of happiness, if that is an option. However, if not, do not live in misery. I don't agree with that. I don't think you should sit and live in misery because, you know, well, you're with that person now and you had a child, so what does that mean? You're dead. I don't get it. But this kind of ties in also to my previous episode, or almost 40, single, childless, and it's a vibe. And I think it's really interesting that I writ that not too long ago, and that came from a place, from my personal place, from a place of true like happiness and joy. And it wasn't about anyone else. It wasn't about, as someone that is living the life that I'm living, I don't watch anyone else's life because I'm so happy with mine. However, I love my friends, and I'm happy to be a sounding board or to try and offer some advice based on what I can, my experiences. Not everything I can give advice on, but I can just listen. And honestly, the more and more I listen, the more and more I'm like, yeah, it's a vibe over here. And if it ain't it, I don't want it. And there's no compromising on that. And there's this whole, you know, a lot of people have this, oh yeah, but there's, you know, this person has the potential to be. And this is for men and women, like, you sit there and be like, oh yeah, you know, she ticks these boxes, this is a few of my non-negotiables, but there's potential there. Or yeah, he, you know what, he's really this, he's really that, but he is lacking in this area, but you know, there's potential. I'm not compromising my peace for potential. I'm not doing it, because no one's perfect. I'm not perfect. There are things that I need to work on. There are things that I may not even know right now that I need to work on, but I know I'm not perfect. However, if you cannot take accountability for your actions, we have the biggest problem. Because it's one thing to say, okay, I know that I've done this wrong and I really need to figure out why this is. I know it's an ongoing thing. I need to work on it. I'm really sorry. Let's do what we can. Respect. Let's do that. You become attractive all over again. But then the other side is, no. Someone tells you you've done something wrong and you're like, oh no, but that's because this, or well, you did this, so I'm sorry, we are not children. Absolutely not. Like, first take accountability, and then you can have a conversation. But an apology is not an apology if there's, yeah, sorry, but like, it's not an apology. You don't take it. You're not even listening. You're just waiting to respond, and that is very unattractive. And there's not much we can do with that. if you cannot take accountability for your actions, if you cannot take accountability for your wrongs, there's not much we can do. If you believe that the things that you do that are wrong, there is a reason for it, and that reason justifies your wrongs, there's nothing we can do. For example, I'm not sitting here saying that I'm an angel. I have been in relationships and not been the best partner. And in one of my relationships, I emotionally cheated on my partner of many years. And granted, there was a lot of issues going on in the relationship. I won't even talk about. Does that excuse my wrongdoing? No. What I should have done is had the courage to walk away from that relationship before engaging in any form of communication with anyone else, regardless of what was happening in that relationship. That many people have turned around and said, well, he was this and he was doing this. I was like, granted. However, I believe two wrongs do not make a right, and I shouldn't have stooped down to any level. And when it comes down to it, integrity is everything, and I should have made the right decision, and I didn't. Am I gonna? Maybe in the moment, I don't even know if I did. I don't think I did turn around and say, yeah, but that was because you're this, and, oh, I'm not happy and this, that, and the other. I don't think I did do that because I knew I was wrong. But even if I did in the moment, that's just defensiveness, right? And that is, at that point, if I did do that, he would have had all rights to be like, go away, kind of thing. And I probably would have taken it. But you just take accountability. Your wrong is your wrong. Like, wrong is wrong, regardless of why you were pushed to do wrong. You still were wrong. And I just think it's not rocket science. It's just common sense. But there's a lot of common sense lacking in this world. And I think that's where a big problem is the lack of accountability and responsibility that adult men and women are failing to take. And then you are left in this limbo of, well, what do we do here? If you cannot acknowledge your wrongs, be genuinely sorry for your wrongs, and intentionally work on it. Because again, no relationship's perfect. And anyone get into a relationship and the character of that person is everything you want, but they are human and they make a mistake that you think, how? Now, there are certain things that I think everyone has that's it, like, we're done, right? Not everyone does, but a lot of people do. But what may be really awful to me is not really awful to you. But there are some character flaws that I think are really important to have. And it's something that needs to be established at the very, very start. I should be able to know your character. And I think it does come down to, because again, the conversation I was having with my friend, the male friend, he was like, were any of the signs seen in the early days? I said, from what I know, there were certain things that now, when you look back, you'd be like, that was his character. But because back then, everything else was great, and you just notice those two things, you can you bypass certain things and you give people grace. And you're like, okay, you may think about it, but you're like, oh, it's just, no one's perfect. But I think it's really important to really acknowledge and address certain things when they happen, and dig a little bit deeper. It's not to say write someone off because they display a character flaw, but to dig a bit deeper to see whether it is just a momentary thing or it actually is their character. Because if they show something in an area that has nothing to do with, your personal life, but it's their work life, for example, their laziness, or they're not proactive in doing certain things within work, and you see that consistently, it's not that, oh, it's just because it's work. That's a character flaw, because I am not very necessarily happy at work, but my goodness, my work ethic will make me do the things I need to do and do it to the best of my ability. I'm not going to slack off. And that's not to say you never do, because of course we all slack off at times, but I mean, like, generally that's not my character. So, and everything I do it to the best of my ability and to a point of excellence. And that does have a lot to do with my faith and what God, expects from me, but also it's just the person that I am and was created to be. So I'm going to do that. If someone doesn't show that, then you can kind of gauge that, okay, if that is that in work, how are they going to be in real life? Because real life, like raising a family and doing and all of that, that's real life, and that takes a lot of work. Is that going to translate? Like, things like that. But yeah, I'm just, honestly, it's actually quite, it's not depressing, because I don't feel depressed by it, because we all have choices, but it is really sad to witness and to hear amazing women, and people will say, well, what are they doing, or are they not doing? Trust me, they're doing everything they should be doing and then some. And I would, if they weren't, I would tell them, but they are. And the only thing that they're doing wrong is really not knowing their worth. Some of them do, and but not all really know their worth and know how absolutely amazing they are, and that they do not need that. But apart from that, they're just such amazing women, and they're with these whatless men that think they're men, but they're not. They're like boys in a semi-man's body, and it's boring, and it's just like, God forbid. God forbid. So yeah, I may want a husband, but I do not want yours. And I'm really happy with myself that I have gotten to a point in life where this life that is mine is so rewarding and so happy and peaceful. But it does, I did say, I think it was yesterday actually, I actually said to my friend, I do think sometimes, oh, I'm a bit too comfortable in this space. And I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing, because what I don't want to happen is I write someone off too quickly because they're displaying what I would class as foolishness, but could just literally just be human, nature. Like me, I know that there's things in me that people will not like or judge me on, and that's absolutely fine. Do you. Like, if it's not for you, don't let it be for you, But yeah, I'm just, mate, men and women, men that, want to be married as well, and are seeing all these women around, and you're hearing from your boys how much stress, this, that, and the other. Sometimes it's lies, but other times it's not. And some women are, yeah, like none of us are perfect, and it's not biased to gender. It's just, I don't know what it is. I feel like as women, we are born, especially the eldest daughters as well, we are born leaders. I believe I am surrounded by eldest daughters, and I believe that we were born leaders. We were born to take charge, and there was a lot of expectation from us. And whether at the time it was necessarily a great thing, I don't know, but I think it's a great thing now. I'm so glad that I am the eldest daughter, and eldest granddaughter and niece and all of that, because it's given me a sense of responsibility and morals that not everyone receives. And it's not just eldest daughters, but the everyone around me is. And we have that urgency, we have the ability to make decisions and know right from wrong, and we're not selfish. I mean, right now I'm a bit selfish with my time and stuff, but we're not selfish beings. Whereas generally men, they are taken care of. I mean, I was taken care of, but on a different level. And I think not all of them lose that. Not all of them come out of that childlike mindset of, I'm a man and I was a boy and I was taken care of and I was doted on. It's like, you need to grow up mentally, emotionally. And I understand that a lot of them are still suppressing things and haven't dealt with trauma and don't know how to because can't speak. And it's unattractive because it comes out in ways like how it's coming out in your big grown age. And it's extremely unattractive. You need to deal with your demons. And I know men that have experienced a lot growing up and acted out because of that, and have since sought help and are now truly amazing men. And no one's saying that you wake up and you're perfect. It takes work and it takes intention. And again, I think that is something that is lacking across the board with everyone. But if we're speaking specifically to these men, it's not there because no one's encouraged them to, especially in the Black community. Like, no one's encouraged these men to seek help because there's still that stigma. And it's just like, you're not encouraging them to seek help and you're telling them they're okay, but they're not okay. And they're damaging women, they're damaging their families emotionally. And it's more than unfortunate. But yeah, just my thoughts and feelings on this matter. And I really hope that those that are looking or wanting to have that union will find the partner that is for them, and those that are in these sad situations will find a way out, whether that is with their partner working it out or just out, escape, whatever it is you need to do for your own mental state, do. And yeah, that's about it really.